morning, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNN today. As the U.S. and Iran struggles to reach a nuclear agreement by the end of March, the Guardian newspaper and Al Jazeera are posting a potentially explosive report.
Yeah, they say they have obtained secret security memos that appear to show a strong difference of opinion between the Israeli Prime Minister and Israel's security service, Mossad, when it comes to Iran's nuclear weapons capabilities. Now, it is a claim CNN has not been able to independently verify, but you may recall in September 2012, Benjamin Netanyahu telling the UN General Assembly Iran was less than a year away from being able to make a bomb.
If these are the facts, and they are, where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment necessary to make a bomb.
But the media organizations say the documents indicate Mossad thought Mr. Netanyahu's statement was exaggerated. None of the documents reveal whether Mossad had a timeline of its own. Global Affairs correspondent Elise Labid is at CNN Jerusalem sorting through these claims. She joins us now with more details and, of course, Israel's reaction. Elise, what are we learning from these leaks?
Well, Amara, of course, The Guardian and Al Jazeera claiming they have these secret documents that prove Israel's spy agency Mossad differed significantly with Prime Minister Netanyahu on his assessment of Iran's nuclear weapons capability. And as Michael said, this dates back to that famous speech that Prime Minister Netanyahu gave when he was addressing world leaders at the United Nations, holding up that big cartoon, if you will, memorably held up that drawing with that red line claiming Iran was less than a year away from reaching a milestone in its nuclear weapons capability. Guardian and Al Jazeera claim to have a report Mossad shared with South Africa's spy agency a month after that speech, showing Israel's intelligence agency felt that statement was exaggerated. Now, none of the leaked documents published by either news organization give Mossad a timeline, and as we said, CNN can't verify these documents. For their part, the Israelis say there is no discrepancy. A senior Israeli official responding to the story said there is no contradiction whatsoever between the quotes in the story allegedly from Israeli intelligence and Prime Minister Netanyahu's declaration on the Iranian nuclear threat. The central theme of the Prime Minister's speech, the official said, was contained that Iranian enrichment was creating the, quote, explosive material, enriched uranium for a nuclear bomb. The Israelis say the Prime Minister was warning Iran was 70% thereabouts in its enrichment, working to close that gap. And it does seem that it's more of an analysis by these news organizations about what they say the documents say, rather than any smoking gun that points to a discrepancy. Our reporting, our analysis of those documents don't really point to a significant difference on Iran's intentions or the amount of enrichment. Amara, Michael.
Well, the documents, as published in The Guardian, do say, have Mossad allegedly, saying that there's no evidence that they're moving towards or making steps towards a nuclear weapon, and that is a difference with the Prime Minister. You know, what's interesting here, I think, and I'll get your thoughts on this. It's not the first time Mr. Netanyahu's been at odds with the intelligence community. Back in 2010, the former Mossad chief said he opposed an order from Netanyahu to prepare a military attack on Iraq. 2 years later, Shin Bet, the domestic security agency, one of the leaders there, accused Netanyahu of messianic political leadership over this issue. There seems to be a bit of a division between at least some elements of the security services and the Prime Minister's office.
Okay, well, there were a couple of things here. On the first one, what the Prime Minister was saying, in fact, that was Iran was moving towards enriching the amount of material that would be necessary for nuclear bomb. He wasn't saying that Iran was building a nuclear bomb. He was saying that Iran was enriching enough uranium, and they were 70% there. And I think that's a kind of qualification that the United States and all the intelligence agencies were all on the same page. If you remember, the U.S. and Israel was on the same page in terms of all the intelligence. I think what you have, Michael, is a difference in perception. Is Iran close to a nuclear bomb? What is the breakout capacity? What are their intentions? And I think that's where, between the United States and Israel, and also within the Israeli intelligence agencies, I think there are differences. And clearly, the Prime Minister has been accused of using Iran as a political football. Certainly in this campaign season, there's an election coming up here in Israel. You know, he's giving a very important speech to the U.S. Congress, and he's been accused of trying to use this for political means, both here in Israel and in the United States. So I think that there's no question that everybody is concerned about the Iranian nuclear program, but I think where the perception differs is on how close they are, how much breakout time they would have, and what Israel and the United States would need to do in terms of, you know, any action or what any nuclear deal would have to take to stop Iran, Michael.
And Elise, let me just ask you this, because you brought this up, you know, the speech that Netanyahu is preparing to make on March 3rd to the U.S. Congress, you know, regarding his stance on this Iranian nuclear negotiations. How has it been playing out with the Israeli public? Because there has been some backlash, hasn't there?
There's been a little bit of backlash, Amra. I mean, I think it's not clearly as big of an issue here in Israel as it is in the United States, because what Israel has done and the Prime Minister has done is insert himself into the U.S. political equation and is kind of making Israel a partisan issue right now, which a lot of people argue here is very bad for Israel. I think that this speech is giving Netanyahu a boost among his supporters. He's obviously campaigned on a very strong security platform, and those Netanyahu supporters feel that it's important for him to go and make this stand. Those people that don't support Netanyahu, that don't support the Prime Minister, feel that he's jeopardizing the U.S.-Israel relationship. And it's interesting because there's even a discrepancy among Israelis. Now, most Israelis, whether you support Netanyahu or you don't, feel that they trust him over most of his opponents to keep Israel safe when it comes to Iran, to dealing with the Iranian issue, but they don't trust him to safeguard the U.S.-Israel relationship. So Iran is an important issue. They feel that the Prime Minister is the one to keep them safe, but they are concerned about the damage it's doing to the relationship with the U.S.
Elise Labott in Jerusalem, thanks so much. There'll be plenty more discussion on